It's time for EdTech Mondays, brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.
Scaling is where EdTech's impact becomes truly systemic. Yet for many local innovators in Nigeria, taking solutions from pilots to statewide or national adoption remains a significant challenge. Infrastructure gaps, teacher training needs, policy inconsistencies, and financing constraints all influence what is possible. And we've heard from the previous 3 episodes, our guests talking about these things. In this final series, for the February edition on government's role in accelerating local EdTech adoption, we focus on how local EdTech solutions can move from pilots to widespread adoption. Our discussion will explore the system-level constraints that limit growth, the strategies innovators have used to scale successfully across different contexts, and the long-term partnerships required between government and startups to maximize impact. We'll hear from our founders about what changed when they began planning for scale, the barriers they encountered, how they adapted their solutions for broader implementation, and what forms of government support would accelerate their growth today. Government representatives will share what conditions need to exist before solutions can scale, how innovation is balanced with risk in large public systems, and what evidence and data they rely on to make scaling decisions. This final conversation brings our February series full circle, from policy to pilots, and now pilots to systemic, sustainable adoption. Together, we aim to illuminate practical pathways for scaling local innovations, strengthening collaboration, and translating creative solutions into inclusive learning outcomes for learners across Nigeria. My name is Nisi Madu, Managing Partner at CC Hub, and with me to wrap up this final episode, we still have the same guests. Emmanuel Akpan, the co-founder of AI Teacha, Ogbuke Njideka Dorothy, the Director, School Support Division, Education Support Services Department at the Federal Ministry of Education, Dr. Ademola Adenubi, the founder of EduTAMS, and Mr. Wasiu Adewale Olabode, the Director of Education in the Department of Educational Planning, Research and Statistics. Welcome again. I will go on to Emmanuel and Dr. Adenubi. Now, I know that as, founders of startups and running your business, it's very easy for you to plan. You sit with your team, you plan on how you're going to roll out. And a lot of times when you start to roll out, you encounter certain challenges, right? That you most likely did not plan for or account for. So are there any that you can share, and how you designed your implementation process to be very flexible so you can pivot, so you can address whatever challenges that come up with a focus on achieving, some of the success metrics, for instance, that we've heard Madam Njideka, Mr. Adewale share. So Emmanuel, if we start with you.
Okay, so thank you for that question. So I would say that when we started building, right, we were very sure that as we go along, there'll be, things that we needed to do on the platform to make it better. So I think we made a whole lot of room for that, when building, while we were building. So one of the things that helped us was that we brought in a whole lot of teachers, right? We didn't just build. So we had this community of teachers, right, both in government and university lecturers, and I think about 400 of them in total, where we kept asking them, how do we improve this? What should we work on? And stuff like that. How do you see this? Is it good? Is it what a teacher should use? So I think that really helped us to solve, at a larger scale, meet the needs of teachers. So, but again, I think one lesson we learned at the meeting we had with the ministry, an issue was raised. Again, I think when we were building, we didn't think of that issue around data. And one of the directors asked, "Okay, this is beautiful. So what happens with data? Because your platform, when they start using it, when they use internet, how do we pay for the internet, and who is paying for the internet, and those kind of questions?"
It's very critical to understand key nuances, the unique context of working in public schools and tailoring your rollout plan to meet that. Something else I wanted to highlight just before I come to you, Dr. Adenubi, for your own perspective on things that you had to quickly learn on the ground and adapt to, is something that Madam Njideka and Mr. Adewale highlighted that I think is really important to reiterate, that when as a government, as a ministry or government agency, you decide to roll out an EdTech initiative, that it's not something that a singular sort of department or agency or unit can do on their own. There's the cross collaboration across multiple agencies or departments that are responsible for different parts. Mr. Adewale talked about working with TESCOM. Madam Njideka talked about also engaging the Department of ICT to make sure that there's a holistic and comprehensive perspective on the rollout of those initiatives. I think that's a very important element to highlight for other government stakeholders who might be listening on this show and also want to roll out EdTech initiatives in their states or in their ministries. Now, Dr. Adenubi, over to you. What were the key things on the ground that you learned and that you had to quickly adopt to as you rolled out EduTAMS in Ogun State?
Thank you once again. When we had to work on this, we're also very lucky because we've been doing a lot in the tertiary education sector, both on the private and the public. And so when we had to deal with the government, we had to quickly understand the structure of the system. And don't forget that I have a research background in education management information system. And with that, I already have my mind prepared that this is what will work within the education space. But we engage the government officials. I remember we had to work with the PRS, which is the department that Dr. represents, and we had to work with curriculum department. We work with the quality assurance, and then with the agencies, SUBEB and TESCOM. And then we're learning quickly, and then we had to build the initial MVP with the ministry. So we were careful that we're not also going to build a complete solution because we knew that we're going to learn through the process. So we're scaling every day. The approach was that we had to face the deployment of technology in education, and that's something that I feel worked greatly for us, that you don't have to build everything completely, because the whole requirement for the education, managing education at a state level is changing every time. And each time you build a module and feel that you can address this, then the conversation will continue. And then you see that there are also new things that you have to add. And we did that for almost like 3-4 years, trying to build and scaling and building upon each other till we had to do version 2 of the platform, which now gave us an understanding of the complete framework of the operations of government in terms of managing schools at basic level and at tertiary level. So it's a major thing is that there's a changing requirement that comes up. Every other time you change the requirement. But what we did initially was to ensure that we're building a solution on the framework that allows for scalability. We understand that an issue that we will have to keep expanding the solution. We also have to see that things are configurable, because you see that something works. The way TESCOM is looking at it is completely different from the way the ministry will possibly be looking at it. Somehow there are differences with the way that SUBEB will also be looking at it. And then within the education space, each different stakeholder is expecting different things. The focus of government and their priority differs from what a teacher, a classroom teacher, is looking for. And even within a school, the principal is looking for something relatively different from what the teacher is looking at. Meanwhile, they are all doing the same thing. Everybody is looking at lesson notes, but students want to read lesson notes. Teachers want to be able to prepare the lesson notes. And then the principal wants to be able to monitor the production of the lesson note and getting the approval. So on a single lesson note that you want to build, someone and different stakeholders is looking at it from different perspectives. And so we had to design in a way that these are configurable. These are also scalable. As new requirements and expectations were coming, we were increasing the demand. We're increasing the design. We're redesigning to ensure that we meet up with them at their point of their need. So if it's about experience or what we're able to learn, I think it's about the fact that the requirement keeps changing. And then you have to build a system that responds to that changes and requirements without necessarily having to build over again. So it's context, it's about building a solution that is adaptable, that can fit into the public sector system. It's also expandable and that can allow for new requirement to blend in into the existing and then not losing anything and not changing the perspective of the solution for the end users. So those were majorly our things, I mean, the things that we experienced at the point of launch. And like I also mentioned, that one other thing that we see is that we were able to build that approach of cascading the roles was also something that I think was fine in terms of the way we were able to bring it up at the very beginning. So wherein you allow teachers to be able to do their thing. And I'll give you how that played out. You know, if you deploy that kind of solution on a state level, and then you want to capture the data of all the schools, for Ogun State, there are about over 2,000 public schools and over 8,000 private schools that the Ministry of Education oversees. And if you have to manage that kind of data that you want to collect when it doesn't exist in the first instance, perhaps someone would have thought that would take like a whole year to do. But because we had to change it, change the approach, and then provide our own approach based on what we have learned through the system, we provided a situation where the ministry on board, the zonal officers on board, the principals, then we appointed the school portal administrators for each school, and each school portal administrator now onboard the class teachers. And then each class teacher is to onboard learners in their school. So interestingly, within 2 weeks, we're able to gather over 1 million data across schools, because this data, we didn't capture it by ourselves. The class teacher captured and they pushed it, and we validated that with the ministry, and then we're able to do the miracle. So that approach of having to put everybody's hand on the platform and then giving them a sense of ownership was something that we were quick to learn, and then we were quick to adopt and use within the system. And I think that was what actually allowed EduTAMS to be able to capture the entire schools and capture their entire data.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adenubi. I mean, very, very interesting insights you've highlighted there. Emmanuel is seated beside me here in the studio, and I heard him, commenting in agreement to a number of things Dr. Adenubi said. Yes. And Emmanuel, I'll come to you a little bit to share a bit more as to why that resonated very strongly, with you. But just before I come to you, there's also something critical that you mentioned, Dr. Adenubi, about how from one part, it's really great to have multiple stakeholders, government stakeholders coming together to play different roles in the rollout of an EdTech solution, like Madam Njideka highlighted and Mr. Adewale highlighted. But those multiple stakeholders can also bring with them complexities in terms of what it is they want to see, done on the project. So I would come back to Mr. Adewale and Madam Njideka to just share from your perspective. You had to engage with a number of different stakeholders to roll out these solutions. What key things can you share as to, critical approaches to make sure that everybody is kept, up to date or abreast of what is happening, the rollout plans, and to also take into consideration their own perspectives, and in certain situations, maybe managing their expectations to say, well, perhaps we cannot do it at this point. Maybe in phase 2 or when we want to go to more schools, we'll do that. I'm really curious to hear any thoughts that you might have, but you don't have to go immediately. I just want Emmanuel to quickly share a bit about what resonated with some of the things that Dr. Adenubi was sharing, and then we'll come to Madam Njideka and Mr. Adewale to answer.
Yes, so I think perfectly true, right? Because we'd sold LMS platforms before from, I would say the biggest two. So there are platforms here. And this was a major problem where there's this bottleneck with how to get teachers onboarded, how to get students onboarded. They have to go through a district administrator. He's the only person that can do anything. If he doesn't approve you, nothing can happen. So giving teachers or giving giving it over to users to be able to do, put in, okay, so I want to put my student on board, I can do that. So that really resonated because, again, from the standpoint of why many schools or many teachers refuse to use EdTech platforms. So we have issues with adoption, right? You heard what he said in 2 weeks. So you could see that that's purely good adoption because everybody can use it, right? It's very simple to use. There's no need for any technicalities to be able to understand how to make use of it. But if there were issues like, you have to go through so many processes to learn how to use the platform, and then you have to wait for one person to get this done before you can do that, because you can do this. So I think that's where even EdTech startups, those building for this space, should really consider that. That whatever it is that you're building, make it simple.
Yeah.
Take away any kinds of hassles. No stress. There's no need for those things, right? Let people be able to take ownership. The teacher should take ownership. These are my students, I can upload them. The school administrator should be able to take ownership. These are my teachers, I can upload them. The government, for example, should be able to take ownership. These are my principals, I can upload them. I don't need a super administrator that would have to approve something for me for them to now start doing things. So it's for you to be able to upload, to get 1 million people data in 2 weeks. That's, like I said, a miracle. And that could only happen because everybody's taking ownership. Everybody can do the things themselves without having to go through any, hassles. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. So the importance of ownership is coming up, here again, and making sure that you're building scalable and flexible systems that take into consideration the government's unique approach to, its operations and running the education system. So, Madam Njideka, we'll start with you, please. In terms of key highlights or key things that one needs to know in ensuring that all stakeholders are kept abreast and that we're able to make sure that, we can take into consideration everybody's perspective.
It's about being open-minded to know that this is not just you. All of us, we all have the policy, the mandate of the education, the overall mandate in mind. And so when you talk about managing the expectations of everybody, our expectations are one. The mission and the vision of the ministry is one. It's just that where your own mandate, where your own knowledge ends, another person's own may also be beginning there. We, just like I said, we might not be an ICT expert. That's why the ICT department is there. So when it comes to the issue of ICT, they will say, okay, this is needed, this is necessary, this is not right, this does not align with the mandate. So, and we, make corrections and adjustments based on their input. And then the senior secondary department that is in charge of all the Unity colleges will tell you, okay, when you want to select schools, you can select these schools. They have these are the characteristics of selections. The characteristics we're going to use to do the selection. Of course, we will align with it because they are the ones that are, they are aware of what the schools are and what the peculiarities for the different colleges are. So I think in all, everybody brought their ideas together and then we're able to come up with a holistic engagement based on what can be, what the training module should be. If ITEC is aware that the training modules, they have to make some adjustments to align with what our technical department suggested. There were so many suggestions that came on board the day they did a demonstration. And that's the essence of the demonstration, that we will be able to make input and ensure that what is being rolled out is aligning with all the mandate and the vision of the ministry. So once it has been rolled out, there's no issue of discrepancy again. It means that it has been agreed on. So the only other thing is for the office in charge to now bring a report that will say, okay, this was what the rollout is like. And it is from that report that further engagement will take place.
Absolutely. Every single department will bring their own perspective to it. And key thing you mentioned there is understanding that it's one mandate. Everyone is trying to achieve the same thing, albeit from different perspectives, and that's respect of their expertise, that they bring to the table, and making sure that everyone, has that say and their different mandates are respected. Thank you so much for sharing that. Over this 4-part series in February, our conversations on the role of government in accelerating EdTech adoption have highlighted that scaling local EdTech solutions is more than just technology. It requires aligning innovation with public sector realities, objectives, goals, using evidence to inform decisions, and building long-term collaboration, not just between government and innovators, but as we learned, between multiple government departments, MDAs, agencies as well. From the experience of EduTAMS and Ai Teacha, we've seen how infrastructure gaps, policy inconsistencies, and operational constraints can slow growth, and how adaptive strategy and strong partnerships can help solutions reach more learners. As we close this final episode of the February series, we'd love to hear from you. If you haven't shared your thoughts yet, here's the question again. What is the single most important factor that would help local EdTech solutions move from pilot to national adoption with strong government support? We invite you, our listeners, to share your thoughts with us in the comments on social media or through our direct message channels via SMS or WhatsApp at 0703 1650 809 or call 0706 402 0742. Remember, you can continue this discussion on our WhatsApp and Telegram channels, EdTech Mondays Nigeria. And don't forget, past episodes are always available on Spotify, EdTech Mondays Nigeria, and YouTube CC Hub Africa. Your feedback will help shape the conversations we host and the policy dialogues we advocate for. Thank you. Bye for now.
Tech Mondays, brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.